Welcome to the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. This is your host, Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor, helping business owners create financial freedom faster by mastering the language of money. Want to see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom? Complete our 40-point financial performance scorecard at wealthhealthcheck.com.au. That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. The average score for most business owners is 18 out of 40. So complete the scorecard now and see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom. G'day guys, Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor here, and we're here for another episode of the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. I've got a new friend of mine who's introduced to me by an old friend of mine, Brian Quinlan. So Brian and I go back a long way, and whenever he makes recommendations, I always hold them in high esteem. And I'm very happy to have been introduced to Dan Suckling, and I'm really looking forward for us to have a great conversation today around what it actually takes to be a successful Fit Pro in 2023. 2024 and beyond, because it is a very saturated and crowded space. There is a very big gap in between the economic situation between struggling trainers and those who are absolutely crushing it. So I'm really excited to unpack the what goes on behind the scenes of a successful Fit Pro business. So Dan, thanks for joining us, mate. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here. And we've only been in touch for a very short period of time, but I've heard some really good things, and from the time that we have spent together, we've connected really well. So I'm really excited to be here.
Me too, mate. So, mate, let's do a little bit of background. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story and what got you to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I'm Dan Suckling, and where do I start? I've had a really crazy childhood and a crazy journey from as a young kid to where I am today. And I really appreciate the underdogs and the people that have sort of been through hard times inside of their lives, because I really feel like it does build a level of resilience that can't be attained through an easy life. And so I was born in Australia. My parents were Kiwis. My parents moved to Australia to start a new life. My dad was a runaway brethren from a church that had crazy rules in place where they couldn't watch TV or listen to music or interact with anybody outside the church because they were told that they were going to go to hell. And so my dad ran away from home when he was 14 years old, slept on the street. The police found him. He ended up living with some friends, and then moved to Australia to have me. My mum had a really bad upbringing, sexual abuse, etc. So both of them changed their names. And when I was 13 years old in Australia, my grandparents tracked down my dad and said, "Hey, we forgive you for your sins. We've put together $60,000 for a house deposit for you to move to New Zealand." And so we moved over. And from that point, I got caught up in a really bad crowd. As a young kid trying to fit in and be accepted, I was operating really out of alignment with who I was. And one day when I was 16 years old, I was sitting in my room playing PlayStation, and my parents walked in and they said, "Hey, we can't control you. We can't control your friends. We got you a one-way ticket to Australia and you leave next week." I've got no family over there. And so I was living with some old primary school friends for a while, and, again, caught up with the wrong crowd, bad influences, dove down the path of drugs and binge drinking, etc. And I lasted there for about 2 years. And I just really wanted to prove to my parents that, I can be independent. I can make it on my own. But after 2 years, I remember one time I was at the ATM machine with my friends, and I got out $200, and I checked my balance again. Now it said 400. So I got out 400. Then I checked it. It said 800. Got out 800. And it turns out that I was going more and more into overdraft. And it was like I didn't see the negative sign. So I remember I rang my dad off a payphone, basically crying and just begging for him to bring me back to New Zealand. And, I came back and completely turned my life around. I used to really dislike my parents for what they did. I just felt like they didn't care. But when I came back from Australia, I basically had a new perspective and a newfound respect for my parents for sending me away. And I started working and went from one job to the next. And I felt this deep sense of unfulfillment and this feeling that I was meant for more inside of my life. And so I got into boxing. And one day I was in the back room ready to go into a fight. And my dad pulled me outside and told me that mum had unexpectedly passed away. Quick side note, my mum was a champion bodybuilder for years and years. So around that time, I stopped boxing and I decided to do a bodybuilding show in memory of my mum. And so that bodybuilding show led to an obsession with nutrition and exercise, etc. So I got certified. I got a job inside of a gym. And it was really hard for me to get clients in the gym because all the PTs there were offering nutritional packages. And I was only in the gym simply as a nutritionist. So I started seeing ads on Facebook around that time of, people saying that they can help you grow an online fitness business. And I was like, this sounds amazing. So I jumped on a call with a guy. And at the end, I remember he said to me, the investment's $8,000. And in my mind, I thought it was going to be something like $1,000 or $2,000 max. I'd never jumped on a call with a mentor. And I said, I can't afford that. And he asked me a question that stuck with me. And he asked me, so what are you going to do, Dan? What's the alternative? And it was such a powerful question at the time because in my mind, there was nothing else that I wanted to do. This was all I wanted to do. So I pondered on that question for about 2 weeks. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go all in. I sold my lounge room furniture. I sold my TV. I rang up the bank. I got a $6,000 loan. And I rang him back up and I said, let's do this. And then, from that point, I scaled an online fitness business called Super Mums Elite. We generated $1.2 million in revenue in about 2.5 years. And then throughout that process, I became obsessed about marketing and sales and systems. And so I built a consulting company called Cash Clock Academy to show other online fitness coaches how to do the same and how to achieve the same success that I had. But I found myself burning out because I'm juggling these two businesses. And so I had to make a decision. And so overnight, I literally shut down Super Mums Elite. I went live inside of the group. There were tears in my eyes. I said, I've found a new passion. But what I did for those mums is I kept the group open. I updated their workouts and their nutrition for the next 2 years. And the group is actually still live today. So I built up Cash Clock Academy, and that was awesome. And I got it to a point where it was generating about $260K a month. And then at that point, I hired a mentor to look at bolting on a subscription model onto our existing high ticket consulting model. And then I was entertaining the idea of like, hey, what if I just went all in on the subscription and I, let go of the high ticket offer or just sold that portion of the company? And my mentor at the time said, I can definitely talk to a few people and see if we could strike up a deal. And we ended up striking up a deal. We signed an acquisition agreement for 950,000 USD. The new owner came in and turned off the ad campaign that was responsible for around 95% of the company's revenue. He tried to run a LinkedIn cold outreach strategy that was failing, and he stopped paying the team. And so one by one, the team members started to leave the company. And as a result of that, the clients weren't being looked after. And so eventually the company just got burnt to the ground. I sunk about 30 grand into lawyer fees to fight the case and to get the money, and also to help the clients, help the team members. And he just kept ignoring the demand letters. The lawyers ended up coming to me and saying, hey, if you want to take it further, the next step is litigation. It's going to cost around 200,000 USD. Even if you win the case, if he has his assets tied up in trusts or he has no assets to his name, even if you win the case, you may not actually get the funds. And I was pouring so much mental energy into that case that I got to the point where I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to walk away from it. From the acquisition of the company, I got about 12 grand out of the sale. And then I built Fitprenuer University over the last 18 months. And here we are right now. We're about to close off 2023 with $1 million generated, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, just the whole journey has been such a crazy, eye-opening process. It's insane.
Mate, what a journey. That's phenomenal. There's so much to unpack here, mate. And look, there's a lot of similarities between our experiences. And I'm a big believer that tough times, particularly in childhood, create the world's best and greatest entrepreneurs. Because people like us have something to prove in the world. There's an itch that needs to be scratched. We want to leave our mark. And we have the level of resilience and ability to persevere like many other people just don't have. They just don't have it in them. And I can see this common thread through your upbringing and the challenges that you've navigated and the situation with your mum. and going on to doing the bodybuilding and finding yourself in the fitness space, and then having somebody come in and burn your hard work, your blood, sweat, and tears to the ground, and you just go on to the next thing. This takes an incredible amount of determination. And is there a way that you can put your finger on what that common thread is? Like that, even though you've encountered these incredible difficulties, that you've continued to charge on, what do you stack that up to, mate?
Well, I think before I even hired my very first mentor, I knew that I was dissatisfied with my life path and the career that I was in. You know, I was moving furniture for a living for my dad's company on next to minimum wage. And, you know, before I hired that first mentor, this whole opportunity wasn't even in my awareness, you know. And I think if most people realized how much work was actually involved to build a company, I don't think many people would actually go through with it. But I know for myself personally, I started the path, I started to see some success. And sometimes you've walked so far down the road that the pain of going backwards is far greater than the pain of actually, you know, pushing through the resistance and doing what it takes to continue moving forward. And I think everybody needs to get to that point where you've almost created this necessary pressure for yourself that it's do or die. It's binary. There's no plan B. There's no going back. Yeah. And so, you know, with the old company, you know, and having that burnt to the ground and building Fitprenuer University, a lot of people might say, man, like, that's crazy how you just move from one thing to the next. In my mind, I'm like, there is no option. In my mind, it's like, it's literally like life or death. Yes. And I think approaching business with that mindset, I mean, some people might call it unhealthy, but I mean, it served me very, very well.
And I think it's about having the right intentions with it, right? Because I feel very much the same. I'm a very much burn the boats on the beach scenario. And it's funny, I've been reading a book recently by a guy called Robert Greene that's called Mastery. I'm not sure if you've read it, Dan.
No, I haven't read that book.
It's phenomenal. Highly recommend it. And he talks about these scenarios of these people who've gone along and mastered their various crafts. And there was a Spanish sailor. He was part of the military. They were expanding into Mexico. And he had this vision for what he wanted to create. And he literally burnt the boats on the beach because he knew that his men needed to see that he had conviction in winning this battle, of going on to greatness, of carving out their own territory. And whether or not you agree with his philosophy and what he was trying to do, let's understand the whole idea of burning the boats. He backed himself 100%. Like, failure wasn't an option. And I'm very much that kind of person. It's always, it's forward or nothing. But there's many people who aren't like that. And it's interesting that I see, particularly through the last 12 months, we've navigated some very tumultuous times. We've had COVID. We've got high inflation, high interest rates. There's cost of living pressures. However, I've seen the proportion of people who are giving up, that are folding their business, that are going back to employment, that are retreating to safety, is spiking. It's increasing at a rate of knots. What do you stack that up to, mate? Like, why do people quit?
Your reasons for doing this must be greater than the resistance that you're inevitably going to face along the way. You can either be pushed away from a place of pain, from a place of dissatisfaction with your life, or you can be pulled towards a vision. And for myself, I was pushed out of a place of pain. And even to this point, I'm probably even more driven from a place of pain or perceived pain than the vision and the possibility. And that's something that I'm trying to work on, is trying to channel in that vision, so that it's, you know, once you get out of this place of scarcity and out of this place of survival, there's a lot of people will either just take their foot off the gas pedal, they'll go backwards, or they'll just stay comfortable where they are. And I think it's at that point where you need to really start to sell yourself on what's the bigger vision, what's the bigger thing that I'm actually moving towards. And I think that the hardest financial skill to develop is to get the goalpost to stop moving as well. Yes. I remember my first mentor in the very beginning, he said, Dan, you know, on the call, when they take you through the process to try to get the emotion out, he said, Dan, what would it look like if you hit your first 10K month online? And I said, that would be an absolute dream come true, only to get there and not be happy, because now I wanted 20K a month, then I wanted 50K a month. And it just felt like I was on this never-ending hamster wheel of chasing the next target, that I never gave myself permission to be happy with where I was. Not to be comfortable, but to recognize where I am and to appreciate it and to be grateful for that.
It's really important, mate. And I've been guilty of this myself. And it's just that you set this goal, you smash it, and you're like, that's fine. What's next? And I think it comes down to that gratitude. It's something that I've been trying to focus on a lot more through studying a lot of Stoicism principles. My favorite quote is about defining the difference between enough and extra. The idea is about working out what's enough and recognizing that, and then choosing to pursue extra for fun. Because guys like us are always going to chase extra because we enjoy it, right? But the interesting thing I see is that, particularly in this fit pro space, and we've had the pleasure of working with a lot of fitness professionals, a lot of gym owners, is they find themselves in this perpetual cycle between battle and comfort. They get themselves into a shit situation. They get themselves out of it to just enough where they have that sigh of relief, only to find themselves back into this battle. And it seems like this upper echelon, this kind of gold standard for fit pros is that 10K per month. And so many of them struggle to get there. Why do you think that is, mate? Like, is it that they're not good enough trainers? Is it that they don't have the technical skills? Or is it typically something else that gets in the way of them hitting that milestone?
I truly believe that it really comes down to, number one, self-belief, and actually truly believing that you're somebody that is worthy and capable of achieving a high level of success. Because as you know as well, Jackson, is that our beliefs influence our actions and our actions influence our results. So, I mean, if there's no belief there that you can actually do it, it's going to impact the way that you show up every single day. And I think that the second thing as well is that once people start to achieve some level of success, they tend to self-sabotage through old behaviors and old patterns. And it's sort of like the old you needs to die in order for the new person to be reborn. I think a lot of the times when we achieve some kind of success, it quickly becomes normalized, and that allows us to fall into this place of comfort where we kind of slow down a little bit. So I think the first one is self-belief, and the second one is work ethic. And I think that really comes back to making sure that expectations and reality are aligned. I think that there's a lot of coaches in the space that oversell, underdeliver. You know, the hype marketing. A lot of people read the Purple Book, $100 million offers, and they're just coming out, 100K in 90 days and all these crazy claims. And I think it's skewing a lot of the perspectives of coaches in the industry, where they believe that they should achieve success quickly, where if they don't, and the blueprint internally doesn't match the outcome in reality, then shit hits the fan.
Yeah. And this has always been an interesting thing for us, mate. We don't sell the sexy or sophisticated. We prefer to under-promise and over-deliver. And obviously in a market that's dopamine addicted, that wants quick results, that is very impatient, consolidating the idea of a realistic and sustainable offer with the offers of grandeur that exist out there can be challenging. So how do, as a budding trainer who's going out on their own, or maybe they've got some wins and they want to grow and scale, how do they block out the bullshit that exists and stick to that core offer and build the right client base that gives them that sustainable growth, Dan?
Yes. One thing that I really fell into in the early stages was a fear around judgment. Obviously, I was working with mothers. I'm a bold 5'5" white dude from Auckland, and, putting myself out there on camera especially was like the biggest thing. Afraid of judgment from friends, from family members, even from my own clients. And it all came back to this lack of conviction and lack of certainty inside of who I was. And I feel like I wasn't okay with me. I didn't actually own my truth. And so I think, like, for a brand new online fitness coach that's starting, the biggest thing, and one of the most helpful things I did, was I unfollowed everybody off Facebook and Instagram. Even to this day, if you go to my Instagram, I've got one follower. I've got Facebook friends, but as soon as I see a post that comes up, I unfollow them. So they're on my friends list, but I don't see anything but my private group with my clients, or the random ad that comes up on my newsfeed. And the reason why I do that is because I don't want to fall into a place of unconscious comparison. I also don't want to lack productivity as well. I want to stay focused on what I need to do. And because I predominantly run ads to get clients, I don't really need to show up too much on social media and interact with other people. I'll come in, I'll share some posts, I'll share some lessons. And then I've got ads running in the background that are, consistently bringing leads and clients. So
I love that, mate.
Yeah.
I think that's so valuable, right? Because I see so many people trying to keep up with the Joneses in the online space and in the business space. And they're only doing any strategy at a superficial level because they're trying to do so many things, but they're not doing anything well. And having the confidence to trust in your strategy and to block out everything else, I think is genius, because there are so many distractions and things that you could procrastinate on and go down rabbit holes that aren't going to get you any closer. And I think that's the art of success. It's just having conviction in the path that you're taking. And I even know from firsthand experience, whenever I've focused on something, I've made a decision and I've decided to go deep on it and focus on it almost exclusively, that's where you get results.
Sure.
I think that's the end of the game. So, mate,
Yeah.
these people in this Fit Pro space, they lay this foundation, they focus on getting to, say, that 10K. I know you've got some phenomenal case studies of clients that have built multi-six-figure and even seven-figure businesses. That, for many Fit Pros, seems out of this world. What do those people do differently that magnifies their level of success so far beyond everyone else?
This may seem like a weird answer, because I think a lot of people would be expecting me to say, you know, they're running this system or they got this funnel or they're launching these ads. But what the seven-figure and the really successful online fitness coaches have in common is they have this ability to remove the emotion around their decision-making process. And they're only making logical decisions based on the data. So they're constantly tracking their metrics, they're tracking their KPIs, they know what the numbers mean inside of their ads manager dashboard. And every single week they're tracking their numbers and they're looking for bottlenecks. And they're like, this is the bottleneck. And so this week, this is the only thing I'm going to focus on. And I think a lot of coaches out there, they're being pulled in 12 different directions, you know, write a blog, start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, post organic, run ads. And, you know, they asked Elon Musk and a couple of other billionaires, they said, if you could boil it down to one word, what is one characteristic that the most successful people in the world have? And Elon Musk said, focus, just the ability to focus on one thing. And so the thing that we hammer inside of Fitpro University is focusing on one person, one problem, one promise, one traffic source until you get to $1 million. And then once we start to scale up, then we could start to bolt on other mechanisms. But it's very hard to put 100% focus into something that's being dispersed over 10 different mechanisms or 10 different methods for getting clients.
Makes so much sense, mate. That's amazing. Yeah. And I think that's, once again, it's just that superficial thing of feeling like you're going to miss out if you don't do everything, and then you end up doing nothing well. So you're just a perpetual generalist. So I think that makes so much sense. So, mate, in the context of what you do with your clients, what's the scope of how you help Fit Pros in Fitpro University, and what can they expect working with you and the team?
Yeah, for sure. So basically at a high level, you know, outside of the support and the tech and the automations and the integrations and the ads, and we cover so much inside of the program, but from a high level, a 10,000 foot overview, there are really three main pillars that we focus on. The first is how to niche down and craft an irresistible offer to position them in the marketplace as an authority and as an expert, because as you know, the market is so saturated, and if everybody's just talking to everybody and they're just saying, hey, I'm going to help you lose weight, it's nearly impossible to stand out in the market. So the first one is niching down, irresistible offer to stand out. The second one is how to get attention on that offer and how to get eyeballs on that offer and convert that attention into appointments inside of their calendar. And the third piece is how to convert those appointments into paying customers. So we have the offer, booking appointments, and then converting those appointments into customers. And then obviously we've got all the meat and potatoes that ties all of this together, all the ninja, you know, ad strategies and automations and stuff like that. I really don't want to elaborate too much in the weeds because it can be a little bit confusing if I go too much in depth about that. But
I think
that's
that makes so much sense, mate. And how would you describe an ideal client for you?
In terms of coming into Fitpro University?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is just working with clients that are willing to do the work and that are hungry for it. Again, I think your reasons for doing this must be greater than the resistance that you're going to face along the way. So I think as long as a coach is coming on board, you know, they're coachable, they're willing to be a student, they're willing to put in the reps and put in the work. And we call this as well, we call it putting in the reps. You know, you've got to get time under the bar. And, some people say, oh man, I've had 10 sales calls. I've only sold one into the program. How many sales calls have you done in total? I've probably done about 15. Talk to me when you've done 1,500. Completely different ball game. And I think, the more reps you put in, the skill sets start to develop, and then you become a master. It's like, have you ever invested $1 in the bank account and watched that compounding interest grow? Like, it sucks. But, if every single week you put in, $100 or $500 over the space of 10 years, you've suddenly got $1 million in the bank account, but it's not sexy. And a lot of people will see the $1 million and say, well, how'd you do that? And you're like, well, I invested $200 a week. And they say, oh shit, that sounds like too much work. And it's like, that's exactly why you're not successful, because most people want results yesterday instead of falling in love with the process rather than the actual outcome.
It's a magic perspective on this, mate. And I feel exactly the same, particularly in what we do. People want these overnight, get rich quick results, and it's just not realistic. The idea is that you need to, funnily enough, my first book was called Enjoy the Journey. You need to enjoy that journey, love the process, follow the steps, and the results will ultimately come. And I think success is boiled down to, yes, you need to do the right thing. And we need to give these people the right tactics, the right frameworks to minimize the likelihood of failure. But they need to be prepared to do the work that other people's are not. And that's where they get the results. It's pretty straightforward.
And there's a quote that says, the guy who loves walking will always walk further than the person who loves the destination. And I think that's such a great quote. It's such a great quote.
That's beautiful. I love that, mate. Fantastic. So, mate, let's talk a little bit about 2024, the year ahead. Where do you feel are the biggest opportunities for Fit Pros over the next 12 months? Do you see any trends or things shifting and changing, or is it going to be status quo?
It is really difficult. And I feel like as the marketplace becomes more saturated, it's becoming more and more difficult to stand out. Back when I started my online fitness business, it was around 2016. And I remember at the time, there wasn't too many online fitness coaches out there, maybe 100. And now there's probably about 100,000. And so, depending on the route that you want to go down, whether it's, paid ads or organic, if you're going to run organic, you need to have really polarizing content. Otherwise, you're just going to blend in with the rest of the marketplace. And, running paid ads, lead costs are becoming more and more expensive every single year because there are more people entering the marketplace, competing for attention on the newsfeed. And, now we're competing with Kanye West videos and cat memes and other coaches. And so we need to have a really polarizing, specific, irresistible message that's geared towards one person, one problem, if you want to stand out in this saturated marketplace. Because I think in 5 years from now, it's going to be nearly impossible to grow a business as an online fitness coach unless you are already established either through paid advertising assets or through organic assets. You need to build an audience now.
Makes so much sense, mate. That's sage advice. Mate, this has been phenomenal. So if anybody's listened or watched this and they want to get in touch and find out more about you, the program, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, so right now we're offering a free 7-day trial into Fitpro University. Like I mentioned, so we want to prove ourselves to our clients before they pay us a cent. There's no contracts and they can cancel anytime. And the reason we built the company this way is because we only want to have coaches in here who actually want to be there, not people who feel like they're locked into agreements and contracts, etc. So if you want to take part in the free 7-day trial, it's simply fitprouniversity.com/free-trial. Otherwise, you can just add me as a friend on Facebook. My name is Dan Suckling. I post content regularly. And if you want to have a chat, not a sales pitch at all, just a friendly chat about your business, I'd love to have a chat, client or not. I'm here to make an impact. I'm here to connect with people and do some really good things. And I think that there's a lot of good humans out there, as even though there's a lot of coaches who get a bad rap and gurus and business coaches get a bad rap in the industry, there are good people out there. So yeah, just shoot me a message and I'd love to have a chat.
Amazing, mate. We'll include all those links in the show notes, guys, and just make sure that anything you've listened to on this show that's resonated with you, take action, because a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you put it into practice. Dan, mate, I appreciate you making the time and look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.